I think the problem with this is that you can kind of sum up this entire discussion very quickly, and no, they're not that common.
Well, and we started this about a week ago, and I was thinking about these 2-game series and how many teams, when there were teams down 2-0 in the divisional series, we're in the league championship series now, and it only happened 10 times that a team overcame a 2-0 deficit.
Right. So I mean, clearly it's not impossible. But I think part of the reason why we've seen the reaction to the playoffs this year is that this has been a very boring playoff so far.
Yeah, there hasn't been. Well, we haven't gone to the ultimate game, right? We didn't get to a game 5 in the league championship.
I think one team has won one game.
Right.
One losing team has won like one game across, or there's been 2. I think the Twins got a game against the Astros.
That's it.
And the Braves got a game against the Phillies. That's it. Across the entire postseason so far.
The best teams, right? The 5 best: Atlanta, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Tampa, and Milwaukee. We talked about them all being out. Went 1-13 in their playoff games. That's crazy.
That's awful.
That's it. And it is awful. Does it mean anything? And so we can get into this a little bit about does it really mean that these teams that got the time off didn't benefit from that and that actually hurt them?
No. Because
care to elaborate?
Well, I think that's just an excuse because it's not that common. If you look at like the past bunch of years, the vast majority of the time, the higher seeded team wins. I think it was like 24 out of the last 37 higher seeds have advanced. So clearly, being the better team means something. You just happen to have a year this year where, I was saying it all leading up to the Orioles series that I thought they were in danger in that series. I think the Braves-Philly series we both acknowledge as being as a toss-up before it. And I think even the Dodger series were like, well, if the Dodgers starting pitching doesn't hold up, they could be in real trouble.
Yeah, the commonality on the 5 teams that are gone is their pitching stank when they needed the most. The starting pitching stank. Yes, they could have hit better. They could have done more than they did, obviously, because that's why they lost.
Right, but those Dodger games are so different if they're not down 6-0, 4-0, before the 4th inning starts a lot of the time. It's hard to come back from a bunch of runs down.
The point was made that the longest break of the season is the All-Star break, where you're off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I think some teams might pay Thursday. So you're off 4 days at the most if you start on Friday. So this is a 5-day break for a team that won their game and probably, in a lot of cases, was on cruise control, at the end. So the comment on the Braves was a little bit that they were on cruise control from like the second week in September, and they never really had to win any games. Well, don't be so good then and struggle to the end. What are you trying to say?
It feels like the excuse is coming from salty fans of losing teams.
And the Braves, to their credit,
the Braves
did
players
not say
and
that.
management are not saying that. I'm saying the people that are being like, oh, the layoff is why we lost, are just salty fans that are upset that their team lost.
So we talked about the 10 teams that overcame the 2-0 deficit, and the only thing that really stuck out to me there is that of those 10 teams that came back from a 2-0 lead and won the 5-game series, only 2 of those 10 teams won the World Series. That would be the Dodgers in 81 and the San Francisco Giants in 2012. Everyone, so if you come back and you think you'd have all this momentum, down 0, doesn't mean that much.
Momentum exists, I think, within a series. I think it's really hard for that momentum to carry over from coming back 3-2 to the next series because you're going to have a day off and then it's a new team and they don't care.
And by the way, there were 7 teams that even the series after a best of 5 and then lost the 5th game, which is really going to be kind of painful that happened 7 times.
Getting so close and it just did not matter.
It didn't happen to you. So I think that the playoff changes that everybody is sort of clamoring for, we need to make this different and we need to add some, teams.
No, we keep it the way it is for a couple years. These are not the kind of things that you change after one postseason.
It's a knee jerk.
Because baseball's a weird sport and sometimes weird things happen in it. Every team is vulnerable to getting swept because even the sweepless Orioles got swept.
Yeah, and if everybody had their pitch, if the Dodgers were running out, I don't know, Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin in addition to whatnot, it probably would have turned out different.
Well, right.
Charlie Morton might have been pitching for the Braves. It
or
might
Max
have
Fried
might have been not hurt. So the point is that's more of the reasons why these things happen than it is, that they were soft because they had sat around for 5 days. So I don't really, but people want to change this. I listened to a lot this week about people are vehement about this, going, this is wrong and it's the wrong thing to do in baseball. I just think it's a story, that isn't really there.
I just think it's that people want exciting playoff baseball. They're not getting it, and they're annoyed about it. So it doesn't matter. People would be looking for any, because to them, we're not getting exciting playing baseball. Therefore, we need to make changes in order to get exciting playoff baseball. You can't blame the team, so you got to blame the format.
I think it's funny as you're saying that. I'm thinking, we haven't really talked about it all. Is okay. It's been boring baseball, but they've been faster. So have these playoff games because of the pitch clock, and I don't think I have any complaints about the pitch clock being part of this. I don't think anybody's talking about it during the broadcast.
No, it's nice having much shorter playoff games. It's great,
and it's not impacting the game. Like they talked about changing the rule and maybe having the pitcher be able to step off one additional time. Not more time, not changing the time, just giving in a clutch situation. Mm-hmm. So there can be modifications made to these rules in the future.
It does not feel like the pitch clock is having any kind of meaningful impact on the game other than making it a much more enjoyable viewing experience.
Even if they've been a little boring.
Right. Well,
they don't take as long.
Here's the thing. If the games had played out exactly as they have right now, but with the pitch clock, they would have been the same boring, just for longer.
Right, which doesn't make for better baseball.
It's like, oh, great. So now we have boring baseball games that last 3.5, 4 hours instead of 2.5, 3 hours. I don't understand how that's better for anybody.
And interesting, because the games haven't been close, we haven't gotten to the extra inning thing with the extra runner on second. We would have to deal with that at all.
Right. Or we haven't had, the other thing is we haven't had to have a ton of bullpen changes because the games haven't been that close where you're really trying to maximize your pitching matchups.
Yeah, I remember one of the games lasted, we thought, a little bit long. I think it was one of the Orioles games, went like over 3 hours.
Right.
But for the most part, they've been around that time, and that's a far cry from what has been done in the past.
I think it'll be interesting going forward if you have a couple more years where especially the wild card round continues to be 2-0 straight through. I think then you do look at it. If you have 4 years in a row where every series is 2-0 except for that one Met series, then you at least have to look at it and go, okay, wait a second. This is not producing competitive baseball series. Is this really the best format?
You use and is that avoid results-based analysis if you wait a few years because you're saying, okay, it appears we've got a trend here?
Right. It's hard for me to believe that that if you had 5 years and you have teams, the series are like a combined 15-1 with that one win coming in the first year, you'd have to go, okay, wait a second. But having a series of sweeps, even if the higher seed necessarily isn't always winning it, having nothing but 2-0 sweeps just is an entertaining product for the fans.
No, but that's why they play the games, I guess. And so it'd have to happen for such a long time for me to want to think that that's really a statistical trend I could believe in.
You would just look at a format change. So whether that means you go to one-game playoffs,
which is where we came from.
And
the Major League Baseball is unlikely to want to give up the playoff revenue. So you have to start from the realistic standpoint of everybody says, well, we should go to fewer teams. There's too many teams. Okay, folks, it's not happening. The Major League Baseball is not going back. The genie ain't going back in the bottle. And you want to say they're all about money? No, people like to watch these games. These games are well attended. They're well viewed, and people are excited about their teams. I just don't understand the idea that people think they could actually take teams out.
I don't think they're going to take teams out, but I just had an idea. So I think one of the things is people are saying there's not enough reward for winning, right? So I think here's what you do. Here's the reward. So you keep the current Saturday where you get the one of the two teams in the NLDS. But now, Wild Card 1 plays the Division 3 winner in a 3-game series.
Go on.
Wild Cards 2 and 3 play in a 1-game playoff to get the right to play the loser of the
double elimination tournament.
Yeah, it's a double, and then so whoever loses the division winner 3 and the Wild Card 1 plays Wild Card 2, Wild Card 3 in a 3-game winner. Then they go up and play the 1 and the 2.
Somebody called in on Sirius the other day, and CJ Nitkowski and Danny Wexler were doing the afternoon drive, and they talked about a 3-team tournament, play-in tournament at one stadium, and he made the good point to CJ that you got to have home games. Baseball's about home games.
Right,
you can't have a neutral site and take home games away.
So Wild Card 3 plays at Wild Card 2. Whoever wins that then plays the loser of the 3-game. Now the problem is the timing.
There you go. You took the words out of my mouth.
Is that you would have to play the And if you wanted to give this, you play all 3 games in the division winners stadium.
That didn't work out for the Orioles, or
Right. So you do that. So that's your advantage for winning your division.
Or the
you
Braves.
get 3 home games every your wild card round. Then if you lose that, you would get 3 home games against the wild card too. And then that way, I guess the only way that you could say this is unfair is that the division winners 1 and 2 don't get double elimination, but you got to skip all of that. You have to win 2 series or 3 series compared to like potentially 4 or 5 for everybody else. You would totally take that.
You don't think there's any way that the division, like let's say the 2 teams that would get buys in each league, right? We're going to buy them out because they played so well. We got to give them some reward. So you know what? We don't really want to buy. We want to play. So just give us all the games at home and we'll play and all that stuff. No, they're going to take the buy.
Well, you would have right.
Every single time.
Unless you wanted to add yet 2 more teams, make it an 8-team playoff. And I don't think anybody wants that in baseball.
Oh, no, but you're so the perfect segue, right? Because we talk about expansion and it seems, I don't know, I can't say certain, but it seems likely that there's going to be 2 more teams at some point in the next couple of years.
Within the next 5 years, probably.
I think it'll be less than that, but okay, say 5 years. So once you do that and you've got 32 teams, well, that divides out a lot better than 30 when you got 2 leagues.
Right, but are you going to want to say 50% of your league makes the play?
No, I don't, actually. I don't. I'm willing to leave it at 6 teams now. Now you're less than 40%, right? Because you got more teams. And could you do away with divisions completely? Right? Because the divisions were born out of the idea that you had regional rivalries that would bring people to the ballpark. I don't know that Major League Baseball is that way now.
Let's say, let's run along with this. So let's say we eliminate divisions. You just have the National League, the American League. What's to just stop Major League Baseball from scheduling more games between the Mets and the Phillies and the Mets and the Braves because they're traditional rivals? Nobody's going to be annoyed about that.
Well, you should have some sort of, I guess you have a protocol as to how you're dividing up and what your schedule would be. I don't know what it would be.
You divide it up on a regional basis.
Because the other way to do it is to say, okay, we're going to have 14 divisions, 4 teams, 4 divisions in each league of 4 teams. And so those 4 teams will play each other a little more
and
than they'll play everybody else.
Having tried to do this recently with the projected expansion franchises, it doesn't work.
We did. We tried. We sat down and tried to. So I think we picked Nashville as one of the teams, and let's just hypothetically say Montreal.
Montreal messed everything up because there's no East League you can put them in that makes sense, but they have to go in an East League because of where their location is.
And then they started asking the question though, but is it really that important? Everybody's getting on a plane and going every place. Who the heck cares if it's an hour and a half flight or a 2.5 hour flight? Is it really that different? Does it really mean what it used to mean? It doesn't.
No, but if you're going to try and create a regional division setup, you really don't want to end up with, I think the division we had was the Rockies, the Vegas A's, the Montreal Expos, and the Royals. Okay. And it was just like, oh God, that's a terrible division.
Only because it sounds so foreign to you.
Well, there's no shared history between any of those teams. There's nothing that binds them into, like, where all the problem is it just more that there's one really bad one and 7 ones that made sense. So I think going to 2 16-team league or 2 16-team leagues, that's fine. And then you're just like, oh yeah, we're going to just schedule on regionality.
I think you can do that. And by the way, you wouldn't need divisions to have the Phillies hate the Mets and the Yankees to hate the Red Sox, and vice versa.
You would just schedule, say, in Major League Baseball can then even be more capitalistic in their scheduling, going, well, Mets-Phillies games do way better on TV than Mets-Rockies games. We should schedule more of those.
So I thought about that if you had the 4 division winners in each league, how would that go? I feel this way. I don't really like this 4 division thing any more than you do, and I think I want to save the leagues because I'm worried that Major League Baseball will go so far away from tradition that we no longer will have the National League and the American League. And the last shred of tradition I want to hold on to is the National League and the American League.
Right, even though I think it would be a really weird playoff race to see all 32 teams in one league.
Right, one giant super league.
There's just the 12-team cutoff. And then do the top 4 teams get a bye in the first round? I mean, it would be very interesting to see how the races developed as a result of that. But I think keeping it as leagues, everybody generally would prefer.
Now, I think you saw this and said this to me, that Korea does it a little bit different, the KBL, because they actually seed the teams. It is one big league, and then you actually get a 1-0 lead over if you're the highest seeded team against them in a playoff. And I said that to a few people. They're like, "Oh, I hate that."
Well, and this is something where I can kind of go outside the realm of traditional sports, but to esports, one of the formats I've seen there is if they're not running a tournament, you'll see the teams into the playoffs. So let's say it's a 6-team playoff. 6 will play 5. Winner of that plays 4. Winner of that plays 3. Winner of that plays 2. Winner of that plays 1 in the final.
You want to talk about a reward for being in first place?
If you finish first overall for the regular season,
you're the big dog.
You would go right to the World Series. You have to win one series, and you are the World Series winner.
That's not
happening. And if you're the 6th seed, you have to win like 5 in a row.
Yeah. This ain't video games.
It provides a very exciting playoff series, but I don't think anybody would ever go for that because it would place so much importance on the regular season.
And think about how different we'd feel, as you pointed out, that these series have been relatively boring.
I think that's the biggest
had they
culprit.
Been exciting series,
everybody would be.
This is great.
We would be talking about how amazing it is having this many teams.
I'm staying up too late watching these games until 12:30. No one's saying that right now.
So it's not only been basically all sweeps. They've all been boring sweeps where one team's just kind of beating up the other team.
So, except for the exciting play at the end of Game 2 of the Braves series,
and the Astros.
You can remember the moment because there haven't been that many.
Right, the Astros Twins series was generally pretty close.
Right.
That was the only one of the DS
but it never
series.
felt like the Twins really had a chance to beat them.
No, but that was at least felt like a series.
Right,
The other
right.
3 series felt like muggings.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that you always call it a results-based analysis. We're just looking at what happened. This feels such like a dead playoff so far, and you'd be right to say that to a degree.
That's the biggest culprit here is that it's just been an unexciting playoffs, and so people are looking for format changes because that's what we can control. You can't go to the teams and say, "Hey, play better," but you can say, "How can we tweak the format to try and get it?" And so the question you have to ask yourself also when tweaking the format is, what are you tweaking it for? Are you trying to find the absolute best team? And anybody saying that any alignment of what the current playoffs
we already found the best team by the end of the regular season, right?
I'm saying if your playoffs are trying to find out, make sure that the best team wins the World Series. We're not playing double elimination. It's not the best format for that. So immediately that can't be the main consideration. Since that's the case, it should be what format produces the most watchable baseball. And I think people rightly were way too frustrated by one-game playoff series because we all know baseball is random, and having one game where clearly some random stuff happened and one team lost felt supremely unsatisfying for everybody that was watching except the team that won. So I think the current format has the capacity to produce the most watchable playoffs and the most exciting moments. We're just not getting them.
Right. And by the way, if you're the first place team, you don't like this at all, right? Because I want to be treated like really special and not have to play anybody else until I'd like to play one game,
I think the other thing you could do if you really wanted to reward the team that led the league, you let them pick their opponent. In that DS series.
Yuck. That's a terrible idea.
They get a pick between the 2 winners of the series who they want to face.
Oh, God. How does... Well, I don't see it.
So what's so repulsive about it to you?
I think because no matter what you do, you end up. So if you go out and you beat the team you pick, you handpicked your opponent, you beat the crap out of them. If you pick them and you lose, now you look like an idiot.
It's so great. How could you not love that? It's such a great. It immediately sets up such a storyline for that. Because what it would be
that sounds like something you'd read in one of your.
It's honestly a very common thing you see in tournaments.
Yeah,
it's not an uncommon thing to let teams pick which opponent they want to face.
Yeah, I just obviously I don't see it happening. I think the idea that you gave the teams 3 games at home in the divisional series, how much more do you want to give the teams?
They didn't get 3 games at home in the division.
Oh no, in the
wild card series you keep as you seed in.
Okay, and you think it's still not going to the one game as opposed to going to
the one game. So you keep it as it is right now.
3 away,
and then the number 1 team gets to pick which one of the wild card series teams that wins they play.
After the series. Well, that's interesting because what we didn't do this year is we didn't reseed after that. And so I think that could be an interim step too.
So what that is number 1 and number 2 are rewarded with the bye, and number 1 gets the extra reward of getting to pick their opponent in the NL or ALDS, because what that also avoids is a series. Like if you're the Braves, you kind of like
You would have not picked the Phillies.
You would have not picked the Phillies. You would have picked the Diamondbacks because you're saying we would feel, even though we think we can beat the Phillies, we would rather play.
We see those guys too much. We don't want to see them anymore.
Exactly. And so that's the reward for having the best overall record in your league. You get a little extra bonus that isn't going to have any kind of impact during the series.
Okay, you know what? I'm not as vehemently opposed to it
I think
when you put it in that way.
Division 3 plays Wild Card 3, Wild Card 1 plays Wild Card 2.
Yeah.
And then those two series complete, the number one seed picks which one of the two winners they want to play. NLDS, NLCS, World Series.
And had you reseeded this year, the Braves would have played the Diamondbacks.
Exactly.
So I think that is a better way to approach it in the short term. If we find that we're not getting, we can always do something even more interesting, which is like let the team pick their opponent, which I don't. I
think that's only the number one seed.
That's
You just let it go into the NLDS. You let the number one seed pick which team they want to play. The other team, because the only issue with that is that means all the wild card series need to complete before you theoretically play the first game of the ANL and ALDS. But
Right.
I think that already happens, so it's not going to have any kind of impact on the scheduling.
And I'm not going to worry about 5 days off, right? I'm going to stop worrying about that. Or the fans should stop worrying about that because the format is pretty good. It just didn't, like you said, it didn't work out this year.
Right.
That you had exciting series. If you had game 3s and game 5s,
if you're a fan of the Braves or the Dodgers and you're upset about the 5 days off, just think about this: if a Mets fan or a Giants fan were in your position and they were crying about how the 5 days off were the reason their team didn't win the divisional series, would you give them anything on that? No, of course not. So we all know that you cannot blame the 5 days off as to that's why your team lost the series. Your MVP candidates didn't hit. What are you going to do?
And the Braves and the Phillies both say the same thing about the Mets fans. Well, they cry about everything anyway.
Right.
So we have a lot to cry about.
I'll just say the one thing is the Braves and Phillies fan, no matter how much you might hate the Mets, I can guarantee you Met fans hate them more.
Well, I was asked, during the Kelly Franco Troop told me some during the through last week, saying, well, who do you pick? The Braves or the Phillies? And I'm like, okay, so both teams can't lose, right? Right? We can't have them both lose.
Right. Obviously, since both teams can't lose, the only correct answer is the Phillies because the Phillies. It's a way easier pick. I don't even have to think about that one.
Right. And I guess I said I just can't decide because, I don't want either of them to be successful. But I kind of like this Philly team.
I would pick the Phillies over the Fish.
You would pick the Phillies over the Fish, I guess.
Right. I dislike the Fish more than I dislike the Phillies.
Wow, that's saying something.
I enjoy disliking the Phillies. I don't enjoy disliking the Braves or the Marlins. I don't think about the Nationals.
So, we think about the playoffs, and they said that I heard this week that it would take 75-game series to truly determine the best team between two teams.
So you have to not think about
75 games.
This is not about finding who is the absolute best team in baseball. It's about putting on the most exciting playoffs, and this is a format that maximizes the number of games, gives a reward to being better during the regular season. You're not going to get a better format than this one unless you're willing to play double elimination and play baseball to Thanksgiving, which actually, on second thought, that sounds pretty good.
Wait a second. You got something here because let's say that you went with a 7-game series for the League Championship Series and you made the World Series the way it has been. The first World Series was, I believe, a best of 9. Ooh. You had to win 5 games. So that baseball wants more games. They want to command the stage for a long 5-game win to win a World Series.
I mean, come on, some baseball in the snow to end the year.
Wouldn't that be the best team?